as Matzo has raised the issue of housing, and for families all across the country, particularly my home state, Rhode Island, this is one of the biggest forms of inflation they're seeing. It's been reported that housing prices year over year have gone up 20%. Rent in nationwide in January rose 14% in 2021, the last numbers we have. But I had school principals in yesterday, and they were commenting about some of their families have to leave a working class community in Rhode Island because they can't afford the housing, and this is in luxury housing, to go into poor neighborhoods just to have some shelter. And I'm afraid there's another factor that's going to really exacerbate what's going on, and that is private equity and Wall Street have decided that they're going to buy up as many homes as they can, and that disrupts what we assume is the typical housing market for both rental, i.e. Relatively small owners have rental properties in the state. They have a relationship with their tenants. When it comes to homes, you buy a starter house and then you move up and you sell it. And these are families through a realtor selling it. Now we've got the big machines that are just buying up houses, throwing people out. And I think that's something that's going to essentially sneak up on us like the derivatives crisis and a lot of other crises in the past. But what you're going to do, and in your authority, is address the demand side of the economy. This is really a supply side issue. I would assume you'd agree.
Yes.
But if we do not address it, we will see continued inflation in housing and continued problems, and that's contributing significantly to the overall inflation rate. Is that accurate?
Well, I think in housing, you've got it's land, labor, lots, materials, and it's very strong demand. All of those are scarce, and it's very strong demand hitting that, and so that's why you're seeing prices.
Well, now, will the interest rate increases, do you think, affect demand for housing?
I expect they will. Yes. It's a very interest-sensitive sector.
Yeah, and so that will home ownership. In terms of rental housing, that typically, because of the supply shortage, will be passed on to the renter, I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we have a problem that affects families all through this country, and one of the consequences of what you're going to do is raise prices at least slightly, but we have to deal with it, and that's on the supply side. I know that's not your bailiwick, but we're talking in general terms about inflation, and if we don't get a handle on housing inflation, the American people will still be, and particularly the lower income working families, will be hammered by this. So I hope we can come together on the fiscal side and do something that's appropriate. We are witnessing an extraordinarily disturbing conflict in the Ukraine, and it's going to have repercussions in many different dimensions. I think it will also have repercussions in the financial world, and I hope the Fed is tuning in and watching closely. I think the Chinese are particularly interested in the fact that we've been able to assemble a global coalition to basically shut down the Russian economy, and they will start thinking about how they can avoid that fate if they get into a similar circumstance. They have, I think, a rudimentary SWIFT system, which they might try promoting much more, which could interfere with the system that we have invested. Then cryptocurrency, it will be exploited. I think also, too, that the whole issue of the dollar as the medium of exchange for the world, which is the key that is really making our sanctions effective, the Chinese, again, will look very closely, as they have in the past. So first, I presume you're going to look at this issue very closely, and second, inform us of what developments, and then third, you might just indicate what you think might happen.
Yes, yes to all of the above. It's I mean, you're asking some longer-term questions
Right.
about the reserve currency and the Chinese messaging system that is like SWIFT. In the near term, those are not going to be big questions in this one particular instance. But in the longer run, I think those things are very much on the table.
And so we will see at some point, and again, not in months, but probably years, movement, particularly by the Chinese, to insulate themselves from the same thing that they're observing in Russia now.
And that's going on now. I mean, that's been going on for some time. So, this may change the trajectory.
It's an accelerant.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reid.